my feeling is there's a lot of garbage on this record, which we're coming up to what I think is a pretty useless song, which is Obladi Oblada.
But it's so bouncy.
Yeah, I know, but it gets worse. There are here's the thing, a lot of these song concepts were kind of like half-baked ideas, kind of like what happened on Abbey Road, except Abbey Road, what they did was they made this tapestry, like one song flowing into another, and I think somehow it validated these little short bits of ideas that they had.
Oh.
Whereas this, they had short bits of ideas and extended them out into a full song, an entity on its own, and frankly I think a lot of these songs are not that good.
So it should have been a short story instead of a novel, that sort of thing.
Yeah, Obladi Oblada is really silly. I mean, the lyrics are silly, and this is where McCartney gets kind of goofy. Let's see what we got here. Oh, of course my sound is off. We're in B flat right now. We're going 1 to 5, so B flat to F. Okay. Now we're going to the 4 chord, E flat, B flat, F, B flat. So it's a 1 4 5 thing. Now it goes to 5 6 1 5 1. I'll get more detail. Now we have a typical bridge going to the 4 chord. I mean, that's really the essence of the song, you know, there's not much else to it.
Okay.
Many songs have been built on the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord, and we've talked about this.
Yeah.
Usually it's 1 4 5 4 is the standard, but I mean the approach he's taking here is more of like an old folk song approach with this thing, and the lick. That's basically, it's just he's outlining the notes of the chord itself. So this is a B flat chord, and we have the root here, the 3rd, and the 5th. And so that's what's happening there. That's E flat, B flat, F.
That's simple.
It's that simple.
Keep things going.
And there's one little secondary dominant in there. That's a 5/7 chord that goes to one of the chords in the template of the key.
Okay.
All right. And in this case, we're going to when it goes through in a couple of years. The life goes on. All right. So that's B flat 7 right there.
Okay.
Now, if you took E flat as an entity, like its own key, B flat 7 would be the 5/7 in the key of E flat.
Right.
All right. So that's a secondary dominant because we're in B flat, the key of B flat. So really, B flat 7 doesn't belong to the key of B flat. It belongs to E flat. It's just a momentary modulation to get us to the E flat chord.
Okay.
And there's a movement here. And then, right. That 7th chord opens us up to the E flat chord.
Okay.
This voicing I did only to get the notes out. Don't go with a voicing like that.
Okay.
All right. That's about it for this song. The lyrics are kind of ridiculous, and now we're getting worse altogether. Without question, Lennon probably would have walked away from that song in disgust.
Okay. Before we move on to that, let me I'll throw this at you. And if you don't want to answer it, that's fine. without thinking about it more. Lots of times we've talked about certain Beatles albums, and it's quite obvious that you find some of them more valuable than others.
Yeah.
Many times more valuable sometimes. But in Vinnie's ranking of the Beatles albums, what can we Revolver?
Yeah, right now the top of my list is Revolver. Yeah.
Okay.
And below that, like, number 1 is Revolver. Number 2 would be probably Abbey Road at this point.
Okay.
And 3 might be Peppers, but like lately I've been having a love affair with the real old stuff. I've been really, really enjoying that because, see, if you were to divide the Beatles' history in half, just about, the first half was all about Lennon, the second half was all about McCartney.
Okay.
I mean, when it comes to compositional genius, Lennon showed his genius in the early days especially.
Okay. But now, did Lennon go off on sort of, while McCartney was taking over, did Lennon sort of go off on political stances?
Yeah, that was the thing that I thought, yeah.
Okay.
And the song Revolution really disturbed some people because, back in those days there was a schism that happened between this whole progressive movement, this whole liberal movement. On the one side you had the hippies, whose basic philosophy was turn your back on it all, walk away from it, don't fight it, just start your own society and forget the rest. And the others were fighting against. So you had like the SDS and the Black Panthers and groups like this that were saying, no, we have to fight. So Lennon, I think Lennon, first of all, and if you listen to like Revolution, which we'll get to on this one, I think he was unsure of his political philosophy, quite frankly.
Well, maybe that was a building, like an awful lot of artists, for the longest time it can be me, 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 me.
Yeah.
And then when they have this resolution, they have to start from farther back than other people their age that maybe had been thinking about some of those things along the way and building them. So maybe that's the deal.
Yeah, I think the worst thing that happened to rock and roll was that it got political, frankly. I'm not a big fan these days. Maybe back in those days I was different, but the Beatles were a revolution by the time they hit, I forget the name of the record before Revolver. I forget if it's Yesterday and Today. No, it's not Yesterday and Today. It's the one with Norwegian Wood and all that on it.
Right. Okay.
At that point, they started their own revolution without being political. They were just an influence. In other words, basically, they were experimenting with drugs. They were very, very sharp, like in terms of art and culture. They were extremely sharp. Okay. McCartney, with all of his sweetness and everything, was listening to people like Edgar Varese and this mechanical avant-garde music and stuff like this. And he was doing tape loops before Lennon ever thought about it. McCartney was, in a way, the real avant-garde guy in the beginning. Which makes me wonder why he wrote some of the sappy material that he wrote. I just don't get that. But
well, now, did Lennon, did his compositional talents and things sag a bit in that time when McCartney was rising? Because also the political songs, he maybe wanted words to be heard, things like this, so you kind of maybe keep things simple musically.
No, I think, what I see is like two arcs crossing at one point. In other words, like, when we get to Revolver, the arcs meet, all right? Basically, Lennon was top dog, and McCartney was like this to Lennon. He really thought Lennon was a great, great songwriter, and he felt overshadowed by him, even though McCartney really exhibited, signs of genius way early on, like real genius.
Name a few tunes.
Genius from his early days. Let's see. That's a tough one.
Is Michelle an early day one?
Yeah, that's that. I have a student that went out and bought that popular Beatles songbook, this white colored book.
Right.
And he's been obsessed with the Beatles now, so we've been going through tunes, and I get to look at how these guys are interpreting the Beatles chord changes and everything, and Michelle is very, very complex. Now what we have there is C, D minor, B flat, down to C, to C diminished seventh, and a D7 flat 9. That's the first instance of a flat 9 chord in a Beatles song. I hadn't realized it went that far back.
Is that right?
If we go to Abbey Road, we see the flat 9 chord. If we go to Revolver, we see the flat 9 chord. Also, the sharp 9 became an interesting little chord too that they first began to exploit.
Play that one.
Flat 9 is this, and sharp 9 is this, which a lot of guitarists call the Hendrix chord because, you know.
Oh. Okay.
You know, but actually a sharp 9 chord was well known in jazz and classical, you know, before it reached the pop world. Sharp 9 and flat 9 chord actually very often work together as partners if you resolve it to a minor chord. Sharp 9, flat 9, minor chord. Okay.
Okay.
Now, to give the other instances where we find a flat 9 chord, by the way, just as a side note, is that song, I Wanted to Tell You, things to say. And they really, he probably played the flat 9 chord up here, and this is where McCartney got the idea to go on the piano, because it leaves the E string opening. So there's that, and there's also I Want You. So it's a very oddball chord, and they clearly didn't know its true function, but they instinctively worked it in anyway.
Like it just sounded cool.
Yeah, it was a cool dissonance, you know, that they liked. And the sharp 9 chord actually too shows up way early in their music. I think Run for Your Life, that song. I forget what record that is. Maybe Beatles 65 or something. Better keep your head on.
Right.
Yeah, there's a sharp 9 chord in that, and I wouldn't be surprised if even earlier we find a sharp 9 chord. But when it was exploited was really Revolver on the song Taxman.
Oh, okay.